What's up, fucker?
How the hell are you, bud?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. Busy weekend, you know, with Halloweening and driving all over the place. So,
Where were you driving?
just back and forth to my brother's house and in Salt Lake, and kids had like a marathon sleepover weekend with all their cousins. Well, with a lot of their cousins. It was like we went up there on Halloween, and then they slept over there. Then we went up there, picked them up. They live in Mill Creek, and then picked them up, brought them back here, and then they slept here. And then we went to, so that was Friday into Saturday. And then we went to my other brother's house, who lives in like Sandy, on Saturday for a birthday party. And then the kids slept over there. And so we came back here and then went back there yesterday, just driving.
Yeah, that's a lot of driving.
Yeah.
From here to Mill Creek and back it's like a 45-50 minute drive.
Yeah.
You know, on a map, it's only like 12 miles away.
Yeah, and it was like I think we just kept forgetting that it was Thursday and Friday, so we're like, oh, let's just drive up there, and then, oh shit, it's traffic. Forgot about that. Anyways, other than that, it was good. It's fun to see the family and hang out. So, how about you?
Not a lot.
Yeah.
Did a couple things at home. Really kind of boring. I watched a lot of TV yesterday.
Yeah.
More specifically, I watched YouTube, which is same as TV now.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think I watch more. Well, yeah, probably watch more YouTube than actual shows.
Oh, I do for sure.
There's like a few select shows that I make time to watch, and that's about it.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of reoccurring shows that I go out of my way to watch, but it's like if there's a mini series or something from like certain writers or actors or whatever, I'll go out and watch that. But
yeah,
that's kind of it. It's hard to sit there and just like binge watch TV for me.
Yeah.
Especially when it's like these shows that are 22 episodes a season and an hour in an episode. It's like, that's a work week.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, most of the shows that I actually end up watching are like shorter shows that are like half-hour episodes or maybe 40 minutes at the most. Or they're supposed to be an hour on TV, and then like when you watch it on YouTube or on like Hulu or Netflix, it's like 35 minutes an episode.
Yeah. A lot of commercial breaks there.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, the only real shows that I've been watching are Only Murders in the Building, if you watch that one. And then I just finished all of the What We Do in the Shadows, which kind of segues into what we're talking about today, I guess.
It does. We are going to talk about
Vampyres, the blood-sucking cretins that they are.
the Hominis Nocturna.
The Hominis Nocturna. The Strigoi, as
yes.
Yeg would say, probably. I don't know.
Probably. I don't know. Is that the German way of saying it?
It's the Romanian way, but it stems from a Russian word, I guess.
Yeah.
Stroganoff. I was stroganoff
it.
earlier today.
Before we get into that, one final note on the TV show thing. Have you watched Follow the House of Usher?
I have.
That was a damn good show.
Yeah.
I binged that
I
one
watched
in a
it
day.
twice.
I'm on my third time.
So I watched it one night. I just put it on, and it was like 7 o'clock in the evening. Turned it on, and then like just kept on fucking watching it, and then all of a sudden it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. I was like, fuck, I need to go to sleep. I just gotta watch this last episode. But yeah, I binge watched the whole thing. And then it was like a couple months ago, maybe 2 or 3 months ago, Kara was like, oh, I never finished that. You mind if I put it on?
Send it.
Put it on, and then like she fell asleep first or second episode that we were watching, and then I finished the whole thing again.
Yeah, I watched the whole thing in one day.
Yeah.
And it was kind of dumb on my behalf because I started it, but I had 2 episodes of this to edit. I got one of them done that day, and then the other one took me like another week. But I'd like edit for like 20 minutes, and then I'd watch a whole episode and then do 20 minutes of editing. It was like a work reward thing.
Yeah.
Like, okay, if I do 20 minutes of this, I can watch an hour of TV. The math didn't quite mesh, but I still got it done.
Hey.
I watched that whole season and edited that whole episode in one day.
Shit adds up to me, dude.
Yeah, it was good. What I really enjoyed is the guy who wrote that show and pretty much all the actors in that show, they all consistently worked together, and they did a vampire show.
Really?
Yeah. It was Midnight Mass.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, because they did Haunting of Hill House, Haunting of Bly Manor, Midnight Mass, Fall of the House of Usher, and then Midnight something or other. I didn't watch that one. But yeah, they all work together. All those shows are just bangers.
Yeah, they are.
But Midnight Mass specifically, in terms of the vampire lore, I thought was so interesting.
It was. That was another one that I binged like in one day.
Yeah, like I enjoyed that the first episode was kind of boring.
Yeah.
And it was a little setup, and it slowly got more and more interesting, and by the time you get to like episode 4, you're like, I have to see how this ends.
Right. I think the first episode, I didn't even know what it was going into it. Like, I just put it on. It looked like a scary horror themed show. So I put it on and was like watching the first episode and was like, I haven't really like showed anything. I think there's one thing at the end that kind of like catches you. And so I watched
when
the
he's
next...
falling asleep?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I watched the next episode and I was hooked. Like, yeah. Good show.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it, it's about fucking vampires.
It's about fucking vampires.
Yeah, I really love the idea of the kind of juxtaposition instead of just the vampires are just straight evil or whatever, where the priest was using his newly found vampire abilities to help people in his, communion or whatever.
Yeah.
And that, I almost put it together right away. And I was like, is this dude a vampire? And I was like, nah, I couldn't be. They wouldn't go in that direction. And then the scene where he gets the girl to get up out of her wheelchair and walk toward him, I was like, wait a minute. He's got to be a vampire. I was like, no, they wouldn't pull that. That's kind of hokey. And then you see it and you're like, fuck, that's great.
Yeah. No, yeah, both of those shows, Midnight Mass and Fall of the House of Usher, I mean, I like those the Haunting series. Bly Manor was a little bit...
It was dry.
Yeah. But the other one, the Haunting of Hill House?
Hill House.
Hill House?
Yeah.
I mean, it had some, like, pretty good jump scares, and the last couple episodes were really kind of intense, but same thing, it kind of dragged out a while. But those two, Fall of the House of Usher gets right into it and fucking...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That show is 100 miles an hour right at the get-go.
Yeah.
And it never really lets up.
Yeah.
So in terms of vampires, I know we talked about this on our Halloween episode, and we've kind of glanced on it here and there across several episodes of talking about some of our favorite vampire stuff. So since you've done research, and I did some research too, what was your favorite origin of vampires? It could be from folklore, from a movie, from a TV show. Sky's the limit.
I would say probably Lilith, going straight from the beginning.
Took my answer.
Yeah, so if you don't know, Lilith was... there's a few different tellings of who Lilith was and why she was the way she was. But like in most of the accounts that I looked at, it was Lilith was created at the same time as Adam, was supposed to be Adam's wife. And she was made from the same dust that Adam was made from, as opposed to Eve, who was made from one of Adam's ribs. So Adam was created, and then God took one of Adam's ribs and then made Eve out of that rib. Lilith's story was that she was made from the same dirt as Adam was, or the same earth. And so she was created as an equal to Adam instead of being supposed to be subservient to Adam as his wife. And then kind of decided she didn't really like Adam and didn't want to be like lay under him. Why should I lay under you when we're supposed to be equal? And so she left the Garden of Eden, and then the story is she left the Garden of Eden and then became kind of this demoness, demonic spirit or evil spirit in the like eyes of the church, or the Christianity or Abrahamic religions.
Well, she's the OG feminist.
Right.
She was the first feminist.
Right.
Which, I'm going to poke a hole in that story. If they took out one of your ribs, wouldn't you just like stand cockeyed all the time?
I don't know.
Should have went the Marilyn Manson route and had another one removed on the other side.
And you can do all sorts of things.
And he's like, I don't need you at all, Eve.
What do I even need Eve for? But yeah, so she left the Garden of Eden and then had all these demon babies and created all these demons, and they were called the Lilu, like the descendants of Lily. And so even in some accounts, like she later on hooked up with Cain and started having a bunch of babies with Cain, and then created this whole race of demons and evil entities. And she's responsible for like the accounts of the succubus and the incubus, supposed to be her offspring, and or her descendants are these succubus and incubus entities. But yeah, there's some other accounts of her saying that she would feed off of the flesh of children, single men and children. So in some like Jewish traditions, men aren't supposed to sleep at a house by themselves, or else they'll get attacked by the succubus. And children can be fed off of at night, so that's why they give them little medals of the saints and little medals of like the angels and stuff like that. Like I don't know what the medals are.
Yeah, I always enjoyed that story more so than a lot of them, and there's been some really creative origin stories, whether in folklore or in movies or whatever. I like that one better because it kind of threw a monkey wrench into the whole religious aspect of it, in terms of the Sunday school religion versus what's actually not just in the King James Bible, but in the Hebrew Bible and so on and so forth, where it's like this story is way more complex than, like I said, what they tell you at Sunday school of there was Adam and then Eve was created and the Garden of Eden and don't eat the apples, and you're just like, this story's kind of silly.
Yeah. So I was watching one video and they were talking about how like it's a little bit convoluted because the story of Genesis, the book of Genesis, was actually a conglomeration of like 4 or 5 different books that had been written previously to the Bible, and they kind of were all telling the same story, but they were trying to mesh it all together to tell a more complete story in Genesis. And so they put it all together, and then it kind of, like, I guess in the first chapter it talks about how Adam and Eve were created at the same time, and then like the next chapter it talks about how Adam was created and Eve was created after, which is kind of a direct like it's a contradiction to it being were they made at the same time, or was she made after? Because it's saying the same thing. I mean, it's saying both. So they were talking about how that's why it's set up like that, and that's where the confusion and this myth of Lilith came into play. Like, but I still like the story.
I always enjoyed it. I mean, I didn't hear it till I was like in my mid-20s, and I was like, wait, what? Then you go back and you actually look into it, and it's actually there, and it has been for a long time. But yeah, I really like that origin in terms of the religious aspect more so than just, you know, a scientific or a folklore version, you know.
Right.
And I honestly, as much as I love Bram Stoker's Dracula, the origin of that was like the stupidest version. It's like he renounces God and then he just becomes a vampire. And if that was the case, we'd have a shitload of vampires walking around in this day and age.
Yeah, so that kind of prompted me, and I kind of went down a little bit of a rabbit hole of just like food restrictions in like Abrahamic religions, kind of like how like Jewish people will only eat stuff if it's kosher. You know, the way that the food is prepared, the kind of animal it comes from. Muslims won't eat pork.
Yeah.
And that's kind of goes along the lines of like this whole vampire thing, because it was like, if you eat unclean foods, then you become an unclean spirit and you start doing the work of the devil. And so like blood is seen as the life force. It's, you know, what kind of drives your body. In ancient cultures, blood was seen as like a super powerful thing. So if you were drinking the blood of an animal, you're in essence taking that life force. And to do that was seen in those Abrahamic traditions a long time ago as being an unclean thing to do and a demonic thing to do. And so I think that's kind of where that comes from, is like, okay, you're going to start drinking blood, well, you're going to be a demon, and now you do the biddings of the devil, and you stay nocturnal, and you can take on these mystical powers from, you know, drinking the life force of these other beings.
Which in reality, doesn't that sound a little better?
Kind of, yeah.
I mean, what's the alternative? You don't get to eat delicious foods. I'm sorry, if I had to live without bacon, what would I do? But you get to eat delicious foods, then you get superpowers, and then, yeah, sometimes you have to do the bidding of the devil, or you can lead a normal life, eat boring foods, and be just subservient to God.
Yeah.
I get it. You're just sitting there eating a strip of bacon. Fucking losers.
Yeah, I'm gonna eat the bacon, dude. I just had some like 10 minutes ago, and it was delicious.
Every time I think about bacon and like the religious aspect, I think about Pulp Fiction, where they're sitting there at the diner and John Travolta is talking to Sam Jackson. He's like, "You want some bacon?" He's like, "No, man,
I don't dig on swine.
I don't dig on swine." What are you, Jewish? Pig's a filthy animal. I don't eat filthy animals. Dog eats its own feces. Is a dog a filthy animal? Dog's got personality. Personality goes a long way. Yeah, anyway. One thing I was looking into was the science behind alleged vampirism and how much a lot of scientists draw a parallel to rabies, which is, for one, transferred via bite. And it affects your frontal lobe to where you become more ravenous for food and more sexually driven, more violent, where basically it plagues your higher level brain functions to drop down to certain lower levels in some aspects. And then there's a whole lot of like battling within that scientific community, and part of you has to go, hey guys, we're still talking about a potentially fictitious thing, vampires, but I like that conversation is even happening, of like, okay, if it was real, what would it be?
Yeah.
And that kind of reminds me of one of my more favorite origins was in the Underworld series. The first immortal wasn't a vampire. He was just immortal. He was a Hungarian warlord. And this disease, which was the Black Plague, came through his village and it killed most everybody except for him. But the virus mutated him to where he became immortal. And then when he had sons, one was bitten by a bat and one was bitten by a wolf. Which, what are you letting your kids do that they're out there getting bitten by fucking animals?
Yeah.
But that's how they became vampires and werewolves and shit. But I like the idea that a virus can mutate your DNA so far down that you can just change. You can mutate into something completely unimaginable. You know? I thought that was such a cool way to write that without just going to, oh, it was Dracula or it was Lilith or any one of the other folklore versions of it. Like they just kind of created something new.
Yeah. Well, it stems off of the Strigoi, who were thought to be as descendants of Lilith, and so the Strigoi were like after somebody dies and they start coming back and visiting, and it was mostly like if your family member died, you would visit your family members because they had a tradition that once somebody dies and you bury them, they would bring them food and drinks.
Even in some of their mausoleums, they had a hole where you put the food through.
Right. And so when Christianity came through and kind of put a stop to that, I think that when people think that the population kind of had a anxiety about that and started like kind of having a hysteria about like, okay, well, we're not taking our loved ones that have passed away food and drink, so they're going to be hungry, and so they started, telling these stories about them coming back and drinking because they weren't getting food. They were drinking the blood of animals and the blood of some people and affecting them. But the name Strigoi was both used for these people who were both vampires and werewolves, and so it was kind of it was synonymous for both. Talking about Strigoi, they could be talking about you're either a werewolf or a vampire or just an evil entity. There was also another blood disorder called porphyria. That kind of affected the way that you looked. It would change your facial structure. It was a blood type that or a blood disorder, and it affects your skin and your pores. And then so people with this disorder would have, their skin would look really porous, but then they would, if they went out into the sun, it made them really sensitive to sunlight. So if they went out into the sun, like their skin would turn black in different areas. And for some reason with that blood disorder, it would shrink your gums, so it made it look like your your teeth
so you
were
had
fangs.
like big gnashed fangs.
Big fangs hanging out. So that was another thing that kind of fed into the lore and hysteria of vampirism.
Well, and they've kind of used that in other pop culture too, where the effects of having been dead or what make a vampire look like a vampire. Same thing with the gums when they recede, and then all of your body dehydrates when you die. So when you see like the classic Nosferatu and all of his fingers are really gangly and they look like the joints are really big, and then the meat in between is skinny, but it's just dehydrated because they had died and come back.
So where it's kind of talked about as, lore all through, from ancient civilizations, ancient Hebrews, Greeks, Egyptians, people from Mesopotamia, they all had stories about these entities that would come and feed off of your children, feed off of your blood, and feed off of even your energy, like your life force. Up until about the 16th century where they started actually talking about seeing these things and like
the dead walking.
Yeah. And it was mostly started in Eastern Europe, in like Romania, Bosnia, that kind of Slavic area down there in Europe. So much so that they're finding now, doing like archaeological digs from churches around the area from that time period, they're finding like all these graves that are that have like the bodies inside the grave, and they'll have a big metal stake through the heart and staked all the way through into the ground.
That was one of the things where, and it became much more popular on the eastern seaboard here in America, where if people thought somebody was a vampire, they would exhume their corpse and they would put a stake through their heart, and then they would put stakes into their limbs to stake them to the coffin and put a brick in their mouth.
Yeah.
And then rebury the body.
Yeah. So there's one story that I was looking at. The guy's name is Arnold Paole. Arnold Paole. I don't know how to say his name. Paole. Paole. Arnold. His name is Arnie.
Yeah.
So
not to
Arnie
be confused with Schwarzenegger.
Yeah. So Arnie was he was in the Romanian military in the 18th century. So he was in the army, and he said that while he was out, he was near Austria at the time, and he was attacked by a vampire and was bitten by a vampire. So like he ended up killing this vampire, and like soon after that he left the army, went back home, and was kind of like afflicted by night terrors, and he would claim that he would see this vampire coming to him in his dreams, and so he didn't sleep much, and so he'd like go out and wander the streets at night, and he kind of became a drunkard. When he would just like stay in the tavern and just fucking get wasted and shit, and everybody kind of around the town, his little town that he lived in, knew him as being, they started talking about him like he was they knew he was a vampire or whatever. So he died like a few years after this attack happened. He ended up falling off of a hay wagon and breaking his neck and dying. And so they buried him, and then a few weeks later, farmers in the town started finding like their baby cows had like holes in their necks, and they're being drained of blood. And there was like 4 or 5 different farmers that complained about this happening, and they're saying they keep seeing this guy Arnie walking around still in the fields at night. And so like 3 months pass, and those 4 farmers that complained about it ended up dying of some weird disease. They didn't know what it was. So the town people started freaking out and had his body exhumed. The preacher in the town, the father or whatever, the priest, called the government, or wrote a letter to the government. The government sent officials out, which they actually had officials that would look into supposed vampirisms.
Yeah.
And so they go to this guy's grave, pull him up dig up the grave, and they notice that his fingernails had fallen off, and then new fingernails had grown in, and then his hair and beard had grown a bunch, and he had like blood all over his face, like fresh blood. And so they decided to stake him, and so they got a stake and like staked him in the heart, and they said that he let out a scream like he was still alive. And so they chopped off his head and burned the body. but then after that, kind of the town went into hysteria about vampires and started doing these rituals that, burial rituals that. Very interesting story.
There was another one, and I promise I had it written down, but once again, forgot my notebook. It happened on the east side of the country, and this was in the early 1800s.
Mercy Brown?
Is that it, Mercy? Yeah, I think that's it, where she had passed away, and then people would start seeing her walking through the streets and what have you, but her family members started dying one by one. And then somebody was convinced it was a vampire, and she only had one living relative left, was her brother. So they exhumed her body, and their thought was, if we open her up and check to see if her heart has fresh blood in it, she's a vampire. And so they cut out her heart, and they burned it, and they mixed the ashes with some other concoction and made the brother drink it, believing that would
cure him.
Well, it wouldn't cure him, it would stop the whole thing from happening. Like, it was I don't know how you'd word it, but
hex repellent,
yeah. Some weird shit. But the brother ended up dying 2 months later, if I was going to guess, from sepsis, from whatever concoction they gave him.
Yeah.
But after that, there was no more. They didn't hear about her. They didn't see her. There was no more sightings or nothing. All the vampire hysteria died down because they believed that just rid them of it.
Yeah. So I looked into that story too. The girl's name was Mercy Brown, and her family. She had her mom. It was like her mom, her dad, and then she had a brother and a sister.
Mm-hmm.
And this was 1830 or something like that in the East Coast, somewhere in like New Hampshire or somewhere back east. And so what happened was the mother and the oldest daughter ended up dying from tuberculosis.
That's it. Yeah.
So they get buried outside, and then the brother gets tuberculosis, and so he gets sent away to Colorado to go stay at this like sanatorium that's supposed to be like up in the mountains and treating people with consumption or tuberculosis. Mm-hmm. And it was supposed to be like fresh air, fresh water. You should, the disease can't stay alive in your body at that altitude or something, some dumb shit. Yeah. They believed back then.
The amount of silly shit they believed back then was like, either you needed to move to a dry, arid climate, or you needed to move up into the mountains where the elevation would kill it. Like, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
Just get a fucking TV shot like the rest of us.
So he goes to Colorado thinking he's going to die. And so he goes there and actually gets a little bit better. It actually does kind of help him. I think probably just because he was taking care of himself a little bit better.
Yeah.
And so he lives in Colorado for like 3 or 4 months, and then gets word that his younger sister now has consumption. And so he goes back there, and she has this different form of tuberculosis where it's really fast acting, and she dies within 2 or 3 weeks of being diagnosed with tuberculosis. Mm. Really sudden, really quick. But the time she dies was like November or something like that, and so it was too cold for them to dig a grave, and so they put her in this above ground kind of cellar type thing. Mm-hmm. And didn't bury her until like the spring thaw, and so she was just sitting out there frozen in this like above ground root cellar type thing. And so they put her in there, and then in the springtime they buried her, and then the brother ends up dying in that time period. And so they were like, the dad dies.
Yeah.
And so the townspeople get all uppity and say that it's this girl, they're seeing her around town and she's a vampire, and the curse isn't going to end until all of her living relatives are dead, because the vampires go after their own, they survive by their
own bloodline.
Yeah, their own bloodline. And so the people of the town convinced the priest to go and dig up the body and have it exhumed and examined. And he goes there with the doctor, and both the priest and the doctor don't believe that it's true. And they're just like doing it to appease the townspeople. And so, they dig her up, cut out her heart, and burn it, and then,
give him some magic cocktail.
This
has a little bit of gin.
He ends up dying of tuberculosis a few months later, a year later, whatever it is.
That story was so bonkers to me. A lot of those stories are pretty bonkers.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can touch about vampire stories without dealing with Vlad the Impaler.
Right.
Which we have talked about before, but that one always stands out to me because when you actually look at his history and everything he went through, and the whole betrayal from the Ottoman Empire, where him and his sons went over to deal with a peace treaty, and then they were captured and tortured and everything else, and the only way he could leave was if he agreed to leave his sons there, and then basically waged war against the Ottoman Empire after that, but became so mentally broken because of everything he had gone through that he became Vlad the Impaler and took the name Dracula from history. And I still don't understand where that came from. I got to look into that more. But
it was a name that was given to his father. It was something Drago that meant dragon.
I remember it meant dragon, but I think that there was something else to do with another warlord that he admired from history. But either way, I always thought that one was cool because even when you put it into the context of the novel where he just renounces God and he becomes Dracula the vampire, I like the idea that it was Vlad the Impaler that did that because of just everything he had gone through and just how much you would despise the world after that you would become hateful, that you would feed on people, that you would have no conscience about it because of your experience.
Right.
And that's part of what always made that character a little bit scarier, because your conscience is gone and you just want kind of revenge. You're just bitter and angry, so you're not going to care if it's a man, a woman, or a child. But when you put it through the lens of Bram Stoker, where he made him more smooth or more seductive or even sexy to a degree, that added just another layer of fear to that character, because he could talk your pants off, but then he's going to kill you.
Yeah. Not a bad way to go with your pants off,
I mean, I'm kind of hoping that's the way it happens for me, but in that, I say that, but it's just going to end up me being on the toilet. I'm going to go like Elvis. Just pushing too hard and then fucking dead.
Yeah, that'd be a shitty way to go, man. Like, literally not the best Elvis way anyways.
I don't know. It also depends on if you believe in all those Bob Joyce rumors.
What's that? Oh, that Elvis didn't die?
Yeah, that he's actually Bob Joyce.
Yeah.
I think that's his name. Yeah. Still, the Gary Oldman movie, Dracula, top tier.
Yeah. And I was like, that's really where the vampire, or the vampires kind of turned into what we think of as today as vampires, is the seductive, charming, debonair personality that can talk you into letting them suck your blood, which I guess there people are out there that are doing that still.
That reminds me of a line from, have you ever seen John Carpenter's Vampires?
Yeah.
With James Woods?
Yeah.
That whole tirade he goes on in the truck, he's like, how does it go? Hold on, I got this. I'm trying to think of...
Here, let's pop.
He says something like, forget what you know about vampires. They're not a bunch of fucking fags walking around trying to seduce everyone in sight. How does it go? They don't sleep in coffins lined with taffeta. They don't talk in sleazy Eurotrash accents. These fuckers will bend you fucking over and take a walk up your Strata Chocolata while sucking the blood out of your neck. This whole tirade, and it's hilarious. That movie doesn't age well at all.
No, it aged like James Woods did, not very well at all.
That guy is, he needs to calm the fuck down.
Yeah. I liked that movie.
I did too. I can still watch it with nostalgia glasses on, but when you actually like objectively look at it, it's not a good movie.
Yeah. The only thing that takes me out of it is there's one scene where I think they come pulling up to the cave. I think it's towards the end of the movie. And they come pulling up to this cave where all the vampires are at in this cave, and like he jumps out of the truck and starts running towards the cave, and I'm just looking at his legs like, what the fuck? This is the vampire hunter? He looks like the Scarecrow, or like the stork on fucking the Robin Hood cartoon. He's got those long wooden legs. If I was one of those vampires, just fucking kick him in the knee, dude. He's down forever.
I don't know. I don't think it would work. Because you'd just be kicking his stunt double in the knee.
Yeah,
I mean,
true.
He's only there for the hero shots,
Yeah.
close-ups only. I did kind of like in that movie though, where instead of sleeping in coffins and stuff like that, when they got caught out by sundown or sun up, they would actually just dig a hole and sleep in the ground.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool. That first actual scene though, when they go up to that shitty little house and they like break in and then they start getting attacked by the vampires and they're dragging them out in the sunlight, I was like, that's a cool approach.
Yeah. Did you watch Day Shift? Is it called Day Shift? Or Night Shift?
With Jamie Foxx?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, that first scene where he fights that grandma in the apartment, I thought that movie was going to be so dope. And after that, it's just like, fuck, man. What a disappointment. Yeah.
Well, I hate to say this, but I can't stand Jamie Foxx as an actor.
Yeah.
He always comes off as he's trying way too hard.
Yeah.
And he's still trying to be like slick and cool, and it's like, bro, you're like 55. Tone it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be cool. The only redeeming quality was at the end when fucking Snoop Dogg showed up.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, this movie just totally jumped the shark and all about it. It stopped trying to take itself too seriously.
Yeah. And maybe that's why I thought it was a bad movie, is because like the first scene in the movie is great, and then like it just turns into like all these weird different styles of movies that it didn't really follow up. Like the first scene in the movie looked like it might be a Blade type movie. Like
that was where it seemed like it was gonna go.
Yeah. And then it turned into having Snoop Dogg as a cowboy hero. Like, what?
I did like the two hunter guys
who became vampires.
They did become vampires,
Yeah.
that's right. But they were like German dudes or whatever they were. I can't remember. One of them is like Joe Manganiello or whatever his name is. And the way they're killing vampires, they look so cool doing it. And you know, they're like internet famous type people trying to do it. And I thought that was a fun take on it.
Oh, I thought you were talking about his partner. The guy that's supposed to be his partner who gets killed.
No. So in the middle, they go into a house. And it was the two dudes. I can't remember who the other actor was. Oh, it was the dude from Shameless.
Okay.
Yeah, the big dude who plays Kevin.
Yeah.
And they're like all decked out in black tactical gear and shit, and they fuck all those vampires up. That was cool. What's your take on the infamous Twilight vampires?
Gay.
Super gay.
Admittedly, I think that I watched the first one, most of it, but I don't watch the rest of them.
I've seen them all, and there are aspects I think they got right, and there are aspects that I'm just like, this is so dumb. Why would they sparkle in the sunlight? From any standpoint of vampires, it just doesn't make sense.
I don't know. Just, I'm lost, dude. I just couldn't. I just couldn't watch Kristen Stewart act or try to act.
She's doing her best.
I know there's a lot of people that love those movies and love the books, but I never read the books. And I would say I felt like it was even gayer than Interview with the Vampire.
That's
which is, I mean, very like homoerotic.
Super. That's why Tom Cruise was picked to be the lead.
But I love that movie.
Yeah.
You know, it's a great movie. Have you seen the Interview with the Vampire series?
I actually just saw it on whatever platform it's on last night, and I was like, oh, this is a series?
Yeah.
I didn't know. But there was a Dracula
Also
series
gay,
too.
which, I mean, I don't have a problem with gay. I just wasn't expecting it.
Did you ever see Queen of the
Makes more
Damned?
sense, though. I didn't. Even though, yeah, I should have. But I never watched it. I heard it was terrible, so I was like, I don't want to ruin my thought about Anne Rice's Vampires by watching a shitty movie.
I think there were aspects that really worked. I think Aaliyah as Akasha, the vampire queen, she was very unsettling. But it was still Aaliyah. She was a beautiful lady, so it was kind of like, I'm confused. My boner is very confused. But that aspect worked. The script was actually well done. I just think it's one of those weird movies where you have all the right parts, but somehow it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like Alien versus Predator. Had everything there that should have made it great, but
Yeah.
it still sucked. I'm going to catch some hate at work for saying that.
I would say one of my favorite vampire movies, though, is From Dusk Till Dawn.
Oh, classic.
And it's not just because Selma Hayek's in it. I mean, it helps. But Quentin Tarantino movie. I don't even actually...
I believe he co-wrote it, but he just acted in it.
Was it Robert Rodriguez?
Yeah, it's a Rodriguez movie.
Yeah.
But those two are homies, so...
Yeah.
I think George Clooney's character in that movie was such a badass.
Yeah.
And that helped sell it. And then you turn around and watch him on everything he does afterward, and you're like, go back to that. That worked.
Yeah. Be that guy. Be that Clooney.
Well, and...
Be a fucking alpha. Come on, man.
I'm an alpha, bro! Well, and Quentin Tarantino's character being very rapey and unsettling was entertaining to watch.
It fit him perfectly.
It did. Yeah. There's so many good vampire movies, and vampire shows have actually done some good justice. Like Penny Dreadful. Their take on vampires was cool, and even to some extent True Blood. Admittedly, I haven't watched the whole series, but I'm kind of like, there's aspects I like about it, but this show is painful to watch.
Yeah.
Or
Buffy the Vampire Slayer was fun.
Muffy the Vampire Lair?
Yeah. I haven't seen that version, but it sounds exciting.
It's better than Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I promise. Well, you think about it. So my ex-wife was just enamored with that show, so I've seen pretty much all of it against my will. And I said that one time. She's like, that's not funny. And I was like, how is it not funny? First she was banging Angel, who is in fact a vampire, and then she was banging Spike, who is in fact a vampire. She's banged more vampires in the show than she has humans.
Oh, she's fucking slaying.
She's slaying
fucking
vampire
slaying
dick.
Vamps. She's the one getting staked. I didn't actually watch. I think I've only watched maybe like 3 or 4, maybe 10 or 12 episodes of the show. I think it would come on after what is X-Files?
Way better show.
Way back in the day when there was actually TV on TV.
Yeah. And it wasn't just reality shows.
Yeah. So I would watch a few episodes here and there, but the movie was fucking dope, dude.
Oh, with Luke, what's his face from 90210?
Yeah.
And David Arquette was in it.
Yeah.
And Christy Swanson. Oh my God, she was so
Swanson.
That's the deal, Swanson. Yeah, that movie was fucking silly.
Yeah.
But it was fun.
Yeah.
Dude, that gives me an idea. So we were just talking about there's no actual shows on TV and it's just reality shows. Why don't we do a reality show about vampires?
I'd watch it.
Real vampires in New Orleans?
Yeah. Just watching, I mean, I think I've watched the few clips of those people probably 10 times just because it's so weird, dude.
So I didn't even mean for that to be a segue, but it is, so I think we got to talk about it. Is the people who are real vampires. I wanted so bad to be able to sit through and listen to these people with like care and authenticity. Couldn't bring myself to do it. I'm not that mature. Where these dudes are sitting. This one guy, he's got like long curly hair, and he's wearing this red shirt, and it looks like he's wearing a corset, so it kind of looks like he has titties.
Hot?
No. He's got these bright red contact lenses and the fake teeth, and he's talking about vampires, and I'm just like, I so want to listen to you, but I'm cringing so hard.
If I was a vampire, I'd still be cringing.
Real vampires are like, so gay.
No, I was watching when we were doing that New Orleans episode. There was a few, like, I kept on watching all these TikToks about people talking about their experiences with vampires in the city, and there was one girl, like this black girl was on there, and she's like,
the Uber driver?
she's like, I just want to tell everybody out there, there are no fucking vampires in New Orleans. It's just corny ass white people dressing up. They have nothing better to do, so they create this secret society of vampires. Don't come here looking for vampires, there aren't any. Look at corny white people in your city. That was pretty funny.
It is, just like we were joking about, going to the vampire secret bar.
Yeah.
And so you dress the occasion with the top hat and a corset and a long tail coat, and you go in and it's like Blade style.
Blade vampires.
You just hear that bump, bump.
Oh, it's a blood rave. Fuck.
Oh, God.
I thought it was a blood masquerade ball.
It's super cringe, and it's like, I always say, be yourself, everybody else is taken. Mm-hmm. Please don't center your identity around fictitious fabled creatures.
Right.
It just makes you look so dumb.
Yeah. Or just pick some, off the wall one that nobody really knows about, and then so it seems like you're being authentic.
Literally anything. just be a cool person. You don't.
Yeah.
I'm a vampire.
You can be a Lilu or a descendant of Lillian.
Well, that's the thing is
or Lilith.
Just last night I watched like 15 different people who claim to be vampires talk about being a vampire, and at least half of them say I'm a child of Lilith.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. And you're just like, I know that story too.
Yeah.
Participation award.
So yeah, I thought that kind of we've talked about werewolves and stuff, and so like I was Googling people throughout history that were alleged vampires or thought to be vampires.
Count Saint Germain.
Count Saint Germain was one of them. What was her name?
Elizabeth Bathory.
Elizabeth Bathory. There's a few others. Bella Kiss, Arnold Paoli, Fritz Herrmann, a German guy.
You might as well be a fucking vampire with that name.
Yeah. But it turns out that a lot of these people were just actually serial killers.
Elizabeth Bathory was a serial killer, 100%.
Yeah. You want to tell her story?
So basically, I believe she was a countess, but the broad strokes is she believed that if she bathed in the blood of virgins, it would keep her youthful appearance. And in that time period, virgins were plentiful because people still kind of believed in keeping your maidenhood until marriage and things like that. So she would literally just have them picked up off the street and have them taken into her bathroom and just open them up and drain them into the bath. Mm-hmm. And yeah, she was just psychotic. Yeah. That's all there was to it.
Yeah.
She was... I don't know like where her origin of bathing in people's blood would keep her youthful, but I promise it didn't work.
Yeah. So yeah, when she was finally arrested, so for the most part she was like picking up girls in her surrounding area to come live at the palace and be one of her maidens. And so eventually, as she's getting older, she's like, their blood is not pure enough. I need more high society girls. And so she got a few, like, she put out letters to like all these high society families from neighboring countries and provinces. Some of them sent their daughters, and it was like the families knew they probably weren't going to see their daughter ever again because she's going to go live in this other country and be a countess maiden. And so she did that a few times, and then like there was one girl that she had come to the palace who was like actually smart and didn't let herself get killed.
And was like, this shit is weird.
Yeah, saw all this weird shit going on, and so like of course the countess tried to kill her, but she escaped and goes to the police or the army, whatever they had there at the time. This is like in the 17th century. And tells the authorities, and they come and like go through the grounds and find like all these bodies of these girls that she's been killing. And so they take her and then brick her up inside this cell, and they just brick her up in the cell until she dies.
Later, Tater.
But it comes out that she had killed like over 600 people in doing these virgin blood baths, which is fucking crazy, man.
It is. I think being bricked up is kind of like a fair punishment. We're just going to leave you in there to starve or dehydrate or...
Yeah, kind of like the House of Usher.
Which, when that scene paid off, I was like, oh, that makes total sense. Yeah. Why didn't I put that together sooner? Yeah, that was a cool scene. For reference for anybody listening, you can go back to our New Orleans episode where we talk a fair bit about real vampires in New Orleans and the story of Count Saint Germain. But there was one that stuck out to me then, and when I was doing my research for this one, stuck out to me again, was the guy on TikTok. His name is Domo, the black dude who can like
retract his fangs.
Yeah, and he talks a lot about how vampires actually are, and that there is a society, and that he was like, I don't know if I can continue making these videos because I'm being threatened with true death, which is when a vampire dies. That one I'm still kind of on the fence about, because he had posted another video where he showed like the entire inside of his mouth. He doesn't have any apparatus in there to eject his fangs, but you watch the video and you're like, could that be a CG thing? If he did a really great job at it, or whoever. But then there's that part of you that goes, what if he's telling the truth? You know, what if this guy actually is a vampire and he actually has inside information on some kind of vampire society? And there's even a video where his brother is, you know, out of frame, but he's in an audible distance, and he asks him something, and his brother's like, dude, you gotta quit talking about that shit, they're gonna come after us. And it could easily just be TikTok hoax shit.
Right.
But still, in the back of my mind, I have to question it. You know, my little conspiracy brain is like, what if he's telling the truth? You know,
he's a real vampire.
What if he watches the TikToks of other people who claim to be vampires, and he's like, this idiot.
He's the one that's cringing out, the guy with the corset and the red contact lenses.
He's like, what a douche.
Yeah, there was a few videos that I watched last night. There are people in London that do the same thing. It's kind of like they have a vampire society there, and the guy looked like a Wish brand of Marilyn Manson.
Marilyn Manson.
Just talking about how he's a vampire and how he became a vampire. I'm like, dude, you just got suckered into being gay with somebody, and that was your initiation.
You're having an identity crisis, my friend.
Are you sure you're just not gay?
Well, and that's one thing I like about that guy Domo and his account and what he talks about. He's like, we're for the most part just like normal people, versus all these people who dress extra and do the top hat and the contacts, and who are legitimately having, you know, an identity crisis. And I think that's what made it so much more interesting to me, that he talks about, yes, we can go out in the daylight. No, it doesn't bother us. And yes, we are nocturnal. We do sleep. We do rest. We do eat. And talking about the basis of need for blood is you need it over time, but it's not like you have to kill a person every day or whatever. He's like, for the most part, we feed on animals and things like that, but we largely sustain on just normal food.
Right.
Which I like that idea of, because if you're a vampire and you have to feed, let's say, every 2 days, and you need a whole body to feed off of, whatever population area you're in, they're going to notice.
Yeah.
Even in a bigger city, maybe not like LA, Chicago, or New York, because those are shitholes. But, you know, in a place like Salt Lake, if people are going missing every 2 days, like normal, everyday people, there's going to be a pattern. I mean, we have enough homeless population that you can make them disappear, but is that the blood you want? You're not drinking a whole lot of water, you know what I'm saying? It's like drinking a Slurpee.
Going to McDonald's or something when you really want to go have a steak.
You're right. You're like, well, I could have a can of tuna, or I can go to, you know, just wait outside of Planet Fitness and get a good one.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, this blood is so fresh. You can taste the herbs and spices instead of just like tasting fentanyl. So yeah, there was a few different people that I looked up, and like I said, Fritz Herrmann was another. I mean, these people are monsters. Like, so he was like raised in an orphanage, and well, no, his father put him in a. He was like a troubled kid, and then so his father sent him to a reform school when he was really young, and ended up getting molested when he was like 9 or 10 years old by the teacher, whoever was in charge of the house. And so he started like really acting out, got kicked out of this reform school, and so his father sent him to a military school, and then he was in the military school for a while. And then eventually, when he was old enough, he joined the military and served in World War I. After World War I, he got out and like tried to get a few jobs, but like his history, people kind of knew who he was and didn't want to hire him. So he ended up getting engaged to this lady who gave him some money, and they started a fish market type store, fishmonger store, And then she found out that he was doing all sorts of weird shit, or had thoughts that he was doing some weird stuff with little boys.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say he was doing weird shit with the fish. That's a Tom Cruise rumor now.
Maybe. What?
So
is it like a what's his name? What's the old guy's name that was Richard Gere?
Oh, with the gerbil?
The gerbil.
Well, the Tom Cruise thing is weird because it's allegedly he goes to these restaurants and he orders a cold raw fish, like a whole fish, and then he travels with an entourage of bodyguards, and then once they bring the fish to the table, he wraps it up in the napkin, takes it to the bathroom, kicks everybody out of the bathroom, and then has the guards keep anybody from going in, and he comes out without the fish. Internet fucking rumor, I don't know. But you're like, is it really outside the realm of possibility with Tom Cruise?
I don't know. What else would you do with the fish? I mean, if you're going to eat it, why take it in the bathroom?
Yeah, and if you take it into the bathroom and you come out without it, where does it go? I would
Unless
think
he's just like reliving like childhood trauma and flushing the fish down the toilet or something, letting it be free.
Well, that's the other thing. They say he's really specific about the size of the fish. So either he's sizing them according to, what he can fit in or what he can fit in.
Yeah. What he can fit in the toilet or what he can fit in his belly, because we're just going to think that he's eating it in the bathroom.
He's either shoving it up his ass or he's fucking the fish. One or the other. Either way, it's hilarious.
He's putting some hollandaise sauce in the fish before he consumes. Gross.
I said no tartar sauce.
So yeah, this guy was not doing weird shit with the fish that we know about.
Maybe it's Tom Cruise's great grandpa.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Cruise sounds a lot like Herman.
They're both kind of Nazis. I mean.
True.
Yeah, sorry. I just had to throw that out there. I knew you'd find some humor.
Wild fact.
You didn't even use air quotations when you said fact.
No, because I believe it wholeheartedly.
Those Scientologists are fucking weird people.
Dude. I don't know if Herman was Scientologist or not, but I don't think so. Anyways, his fiance finds out he's got all this weird shit going on with him, right? And so she leaves him, and it was her money that started the fish store, and so he just basically gets kicked out he has nothing. So he starts doing all these petty crimes and shit, and starts getting known for having little boys, younger boys, help him do these crimes and shit. And then all of a sudden the boys start disappearing throughout the city, and they're boys that he's known to be associated with. And so people around town are saying, hey, this guy is weird, he's doing stuff, telling the authorities that you have to look into this guy. But at the same time, he was, to earn money, he was an informant for the police, and so he was doing petty crimes, but also learning about higher criminals and giving information to the cops. So the cops didn't want to ruin that, and so they kind of let him do his thing. And so it wasn't until it was 22 boys had gone missing, and but the rumor was that this guy was a vampire and he was eating the flesh and drinking the blood of the kids, and that's why they were disappearing. So finally they go to this guy's house and kick in the door, and they find him in bed with this 13-year-old boy.
Shoot him.
Yeah. And so they arrest him, put him on trial, and he pleads insanity. And so they have doctors look at his brain, or give him tests to see if he's sane or not, and so they say that yeah, he's totally sane, he's just a crazy person. But But I think that they actually killed him and then cut off his head and put it in a museum. But he was allegedly, a rumor around town was that he was a vampire, and there was actually a nursery rhyme that the kids made up about him, and they would like sing the song. I was going to write down the song, but I was too drunk last night to focus on it.
Well, it's funny because that story is actually partially part of the inspiration for Freddy Krueger, namely the song.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was watching this documentary about Freddy Krueger and like how Wes Craven came up with that, and that was part of it. Because he liked the idea that kids came up with that nursery rhyme style sing-song thing.
Yeah.
About this guy who was just fucking crazy, and he was also, a child murderer. And so he kind of adapted that into the Freddy Krueger mythos.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Freddy Krueger also was based off of the Hat Man, right? One of the sleep paralysis demons. Yeah.
Which, don't let me forget, I got a meme to show you later.
Okay.
I totally forgot about it till just now, but yeah, that's where a lot of the basis came from, was somewhere in this, I think it was a country in South America. Don't quote me. But all these people were just dying in their sleep, random healthy people. And people in that, village were talking about seeing the Hat Man or the witch or the demon that sits on their chest and things like that. So sleep paralysis, and it inspired him to create that movie. Very cool.
Very cool.
Yeah. So I think, in terms of psychology, we find these monsters, like people that are monsters, and we try to slap labels on them like vampire or whatever, or possessed by a demon, because we can't mentally accept the depravity of these people and the horrible shit they do, so we try to tack on a name so it makes us feel a little bit better, or maybe feel like it's not that person's fault, it's some outside force that affected them to do these things,
right? Rather
than just say, no, some people are fucking sick.
Yeah. I think nowadays, like, we look at it, looking at people in earlier time periods, be like, what the fuck's wrong with these people? They're so dumb. It's like, no, they just didn't know better. It's like there was such hysteria around, and there's actually, so I was watching one documentary about it last night where they were talking to a Romanian government official, and he was saying that there are still parts of Romania where they do this practice where they stake the people into their graves, and put something in their mouth, so it's become one of the burial practices, like we have embalming, and then we still put the big cement block on top of the casket so that nothing can open the casket. But they would take big rocks and put them on top of the bodies before they buried them to make sure that they didn't come back or come up out of the ground.
Yeah, I mean, Romania is still quite a rural country.
Yeah.
It's still very grounded in their history and the older way of doing things, so it makes perfect sense that they're like, yeah, we're still scared of vampires, so we haven't seen a vampire because we're doing it right.
That's why we haven't seen a vampire. They can't get it out of their fucking graves.
They're just in there like, son of a bitch, they put a fucking rock up there.
That's kind of where the lure of saying that they can turn into a mist and come out of the ground without disturbing the ground, and then go do their biddings, and then come back and then turn into a mist and go back down into their grave.
Which kind of makes sense, except, mass displacement doesn't work that way.
We know that now. Yeah.
It's a cool idea, and it does kind of help sell that fiction of, well, this is how they're getting in and out without disturbing the ground.
Yeah, that's why there's always a big mist over the cemetery.
Or
it's
weather related.
Or it could just be like that's the only flat area you see because it's been flattened by all the graves, and the mist just settles kind of in the flat zone.
That's how that works.
I don't know.
It's a little hot air mixed with a little cold air with some humidity in there, and boom, it looks freaky as fuck though.
Yeah.
It's funny too, some of those videos I was watching where they do a lot of B-roll footage in a graveyard, but there's a lot of mist, but it's clearly a fog machine.
Yeah.
Because the mist is only on the ground.
Yeah.
Instead of
everywhere.
Yeah.
It's actually really... I've tried to do that where I've got a fog machine and I use it on Halloween. Mm-hmm. You have to go through some steps to get it to settle like that on the ground. You have to like run it through a cooler so the mist stays heavy and so it'll stay down low instead of like rising. Mm-hmm. Haven't been able to do it yet, but
yeah, because when we would go airsoft, I think you were there that one time, I had him turn on the fog machine, and the whole place was so fucking foggy that it was seeping into the bar next door, and they were complaining. Where it's like, that didn't settle on the ground, but it's a small enclosed space. It's just going to take the path of least resistance. But yeah, the B-roll footage on some of those videos was fucking hilarious. One of them was really good though, because this lady sitting in a chair and doing this whole interview, and you could see her shadow cast on the wall behind her, and you're sitting there watching her talk, but out of the corner of your eye you see the shadow of the lady get out of the chair and walk away, and you're like, oh, that's a cool effect. And they do it again later in the video where she's just going like this with her arms. You're like, all right, you ruined it. The first one was good, you should have left it.
Yeah, maybe we should superimpose some shadows behind us on this video.
Oh, let's see. What was that?
So yeah, vampires. Do you think that they are real after doing all your research?
I'm on the fence, because I do believe there can be scientific explanations for it. I do believe our physicality can allow what they claim. You know, you're just a little bit stronger, you sustain off blood, things like that. All of it's within the realm of possibility. But in my mind, the idea has become so watered down with all the people who claim to be vampires who are just starved for attention.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to go, oh yeah, there's a shitload of them. And I believe that if there were, they would try to keep it secret, and they would stay in small numbers and operate on very simple rules.
Yeah.
And stay out of the spotlight. I don't think too many real vampires would be on social media just like, oh yeah, been a vampire for like 300 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a vampire, can't you tell by my contacts?
Do you see this top hat?
Why would I be wearing a top hat if I wasn't a vampire? Dumb.
So dumb.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, I really like the idea, and feel like there is, to a certain degree, a possibility of vampirism being a real thing. And if there are, and it is a real thing, they would have to keep their numbers so small that, like, or else it would just be everybody's a vampire all of a sudden.
Well, I just think about it in the simplest terms, that if vampires are real, and let's say the pharmaceutical companies knew about it, that would be like the golden ticket. Because if they could catch one and reverse engineer and test and everything and make pharmaceuticals out of whatever keeps them young, it would change the world. People would be paying tons and tons of money. I mean, just think about if a vampire can be 300, 400, or 500 years old and still have all of their cognitive abilities, wouldn't that be like the instant cure to Alzheimer's and everything else?
Yeah. And like, if it was a real thing, when you see like these old billionaires that are like now dying, like, you know, George Soros is getting, what is he, like 95 or something?
Yeah, he's like 12 years past his expiration date.
Yeah, I mean, he looks like a vampire for sure, but like, if he dies, then vampires definitely aren't real, because if they are real, he's definitely a vampire.
He looks like the scrotum of a vampire. He's
Dracula's scrotum.
He's got some city miles on him. His face looks like your fingers when you've been in the bath too long.
His face looks like Joe Biden's fingers after he's been in the pool for too long.
And the kids would rub the hair on my legs. Yeah, especially how rich that guy is, where if he dies, there's some pretty good proof that there's not vampires that have been reverse engineered, because he could afford it. Mm-hmm. He's one of, the 6 families who run the world?
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll wait for that. You know, I'll wait to say yay or nay on the vampires until give it another 5 years. If he's still alive, then yeah, vampires are definitely real.
I'm kind of thinking another 6 weeks. So that said, let's do one more. We always ask who's your favorite, your favorite vampire movie or your favorite vampire. Who's your least favorite?
Least favorite vampire? I don't know, you go.
This is where I have to backpedal on my statement of vampires aren't real, because one thing we didn't touch on really was energy vampires.
Oh yeah.
And I know a few people who are fucking energy vampires. You're just around them and you're just like, time is going slow. I don't get it. So it's more people in real life.
Okay. The vampire energy vampires of the real. Dude, I love that character in What We Do in the Shadows, Colin.
the guy who works in the office, and then he ends up dating another energy vampire.
He's like, I actually don't even work here. I just come here and chill.
That was my favorite part about that show.
Yeah.
He's just so bleak and droll all the time. I'm an energy vampire. I get it. I know a lot of people like you.
Yeah. Maybe my least favorite vampire would be Louis from Interview with the Vampire, because he was so fucking depressed all the time.
He was the OG, fucking emo vampire.
Emo vampire. Dude, you're a vampire. Go enjoy it.
I did love that scene, though, after he was turned into a vampire, and Tom Cruise is like, what do you see and what do you hear? And he's describing everything. You're like, that's really cool.
Yeah.
But then he's just
sad about it.
I'm a vampire.
Yeah, I guess in the movie, he's saying they had good times and bad times, and most of the time was just melancholy, but I don't know, dude. Quit being so depressed. Go be a vampire. Live your life.
Yeah, I'm just take all the money you have, put it in a high interest account, and then go take a really long nap.
Yeah.
Then when you wake up, you're like, holy shit, I'm wealthy as fuck.
I own Apple computers? What is that?
It's hard to be depressed when you have $8 billion.
And eternity to spend it.
Yeah. I could buy anything.
Maybe that would be the sad part, because it's okay, well, I can't buy a yacht or anything because I can't go out in the sun.
It's true.
I can't go eat at the best places because I just drink blood.
Yeah, but you could fund the greatest SPF sunblock in the world.
True.
And just change everything.
True.
You're like, I have $8 billion. So make me a sunblock that's going to make me immune.
Yeah, $8 billion. You could probably just make a suit that you're just immune to the sun rays, I guess.
Yeah, it just looks goofy as fuck.
Yeah.
You look like that Tim Robinson skit where he's in the mall. Harper, put the fucking head off. All right. I think we should do a part 2 of this at another point.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot more vampire stuff that we can dig into.
I agree.
Till next time.
Okay, love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.